right, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about a TV show which began life as a video game, and it's a story that is very important and very meaningful to myself and to a lot of people. And we had to have a couple of guests on today, Cassia, to kind of spread the love of this new world that has just been tearing up the TV ratings. Everyone is on board with watching this. People that never played the game are loving it. What do you think, Cassia? The Last of Us. We had to come on and talk about it.
Yeah, I was surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did because I hadn't played the games. I always heard it had a great story, but I didn't really connect with it until I kind of heard what the thesis for the story was, like in one of the behind the scenes podcasts, and it helped me connect with it better. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's a story that I've known for a long time, way back since 2013 when I first played the game, and we needed to have a couple people on who also really love this world of The Last of Us. So we brought on a couple of guests. So first up on our guest list is Al. Welcome to the podcast, Al. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into The Last of Us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Al. You can find me on one of my own podcasts called The Movies That Move Us, and I've been into video games for a really long time. There was kind of a time in my life where I went away from console gaming, and so in late 2016, that's like when I finally decided I'm gonna buy a PS4. I found like a really great deal, and that's like right when one of my friends, he was like, "Hey, I just finished this game. You should play it," and So I bought a copy of The Last of Us. It was like $10. It was such a good deal, and I enjoyed the heck out of that game. And
Awesome.
I was waiting for like the sequel game ever since that point. So I guess like 2016, I've been a big fan of The Last of Us.
Okay, awesome stuff. Thank you for joining us out. We appreciate having you on here. And also joining us today is Dave, who is someone I met through Instagram a long time ago, talking about art, and then more recently talking about The Last of Us, how much we love the game, how much we were looking forward to this series, and have been talking about it all the way through. So Dave, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, what you've got going on, and how you got into The Last of Us?
Oh, thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Dave. You can be found on Instagram at the username at Babu Frick, the best Star Wars character in probably one of the worst Star Wars movies. I am a movie poster fan, and so I'm often sharing poster art and various fan arts that I find. So I got into The Last of Us back on the PS3 era. I remember I didn't own a PS3, and I stumbled across I think it was the IGN review of it, and the review just made it sound so glowing. I stopped my wife. I'm like, "Hun, I think we need to check this out." So I ran out and bought a PS3 just to play this game, and it lived up to everything that we ever could have imagined. So.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, same with me. It was something I was definitely looking forward to. I knew the reviews were glowing, and we're gonna talk about that here in a second. But to just kind of briefly touch on the video game. So it came out in 2013, like you said, Dave, for the PlayStation 3, and then saw a PlayStation 4 remaster, I think like the next year when the PlayStation 4 came out, and then just like an official remake. So The Last of Us Part 1 came out just this past year for PlayStation 5, which kind of updates it and brings the gameplay and the way that it looks up to The Last of Us Part 2, which is really awesome, which is what I'm playing through now. So I've had the pleasure of buying this game 3 times, which is pretty good, I think, for sure. But a little bit of backstory. So, developed by Naughty Dog, and after Uncharted 2 came out, and Naughty Dog was setting the world on fire with these story, narrative-driven action-adventure games, after Uncharted 2 came out, they started development. They split the team kind of in half, said half of you go work on Uncharted 3, and half of you go with Neil Druckmann and work on The Last of Us. Not sure what it's going to be, but probably going to be pretty awesome. So, Cassia, you said you never played The Last of Us, but I know for a fact that you played and know the story of Nathan Drake.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a Easter egg in Uncharted 3 in the pub in London, the first level of Uncharted 3, and it mentioned something about like a fungus like taking over something, and then more concept like videos ended up being like playthroughs like were being shown by Naughty Dog, like kind of showcasing The Last of Us, and it looked interesting. Like it had a good story. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It's like kind of a little bit more grounded take on an apocalypse, but it's like a plant zombie kind of thing. Um, and it's kind of interesting because the locations looked like the like 10, 20 years later after, like a zombie apocalypse, like nature was taking over again. So it looked interesting. Like it had a good story, but I was just like, maybe is this like a little too violent for me? Like, so I just didn't like pick it up when it came out, but I always heard that it had a great story, and I always kind of was like, maybe should I have played it? But there were always rumors like it was going to have an adaptation. Like, I think they tried to make it into a movie at one point, but
Hmm.
it's something I knew the story of the first and second game, but just never played it.
Okay. Yeah, good deal. What about you two, Al? Dave, feel free to jump in. Did either of you, Al, you said that you were more of a PC type of a gamer. Did either of you play the Uncharted series at all before getting into The Last of Us, or?
I love the Uncharted series. Yeah, so I actually I don't recall if I guess the game that came with my PS4 was Uncharted 4. So I played them totally out of order. Played number 4 first. Then I went through 1, 2, and 3 because those were like all on sale in some big bundle. And yeah, I'm a really big fan of the Uncharted ones. I just think that it captures that like pure Indiana Jones kind of essence. And I would actually say that I'm probably more into like Uncharted and Tomb Raider type games than I am to The Last of Us, and
Okay.
so that's why I was a little bit more surprised that The Last of Us actually still kept me so much, just because the gameplay is quite a bit different in my estimate for the two of them.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
The Uncharted series, I had so much fun with it. It's it's so lighthearted compared to The Last of Us. But I remember picking it up after I played The Last of Us and hearing that, kind of one of the seeds that started The Last of Us. I think it was from Uncharted 3. There was like one like 5-minute segment, and they wanted to take like kind of that emotional core and really say, can we expand this across a whole game? And so I was curious to go back and play it. But I have gone back and I played the whole series after, and definitely enjoyed them. And but I've never revisited them either. So I enjoyed them once
Yeah.
through, and glad I did so. So
Do you have a favorite one?
I did find that the 1 and 2, by kind of more modern standards, didn't hold up from just controls and gameplay standard. But 3 and 4 definitely I had a lot of fun with.
That's a series I liked a lot too, and I think that was part of the reason why I was very excited about The Last of Us. Coming from the same studio, it had, especially if you go back and play like the PlayStation 3 version, like the way that it controlled and felt, and you interacted with the world felt very similar to the Uncharted series. So yeah, it was something that I was definitely interested in picking up and got into it, pretty much straight away. So, looking just a couple more quick things here. It looks like The Last of Us was inspired, and to Neil Druckmann in part. Obviously, we're seeing them all over the internet now. Those Planet Earth cordyceps, those little creepy bugs that you get in the BBC series, that was amazing, which I never even put two and two together until I think Dave, you pointed out that that's where they was coming from, and I said, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then couple of video games. I don't know if any of you have ever played any of these, but Resident Evil 4, and then apparently there's a Japanese action adventure game called ICO. I don't know for sure, but I've never
Eco,
played that.
I
But
think.
I'm definitely gonna have to search it out. Are any of you familiar with that at all?
I'm familiar with the story of Eco. Isn't it you have to go through a castle kind of helping someone else as you go along? And it's been inspiring for like a lot of or I should say it inspired a lot of game design in the future, like how to like have a companion going with you.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of simplest terms but vaguely familiar.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because obviously, The Last of Us is a game and is a series here, as we're going to talk about, where that story is hinging on, kind of this companion that you're with and learning from, and starting to form a relationship with throughout the course of the game and through the course of the series. And The Last of Us did pretty well. Its Metacritic review was a 95 out of 100 on 98 reviews. It won, I don't know, like 1,300 Game of the Years or some sort of crazy nonsense for sure. So The Last of Us, it was a video game. It was a big deal. It was a big deal when it came out. It spawned the sequel, obviously. There was a movie that was intended, but apparently, like all of these Sony projects, they never quite get off the ground. We did finally get Uncharted movie last year, so that was fun, I guess. Or 2 years
For better
ago.
or for worse.
2 years ago? I don't know. It was a long time ago. Better or worse, I had fun with the movie. I thought it was
fun,
okay.
Yes,
but
fun.
like I'm like it's a multiverse, and like it's one multiverse of Drake and Sully's. There's
That's
a
right.
perfect Uncharted movie out there somewhere. So
That's right. Yeah, it's one of Spider-Man's Spideyverses. He turned up as Nathan Drake. So, but yeah, so that like I said, it was supposed to be a movie, and then it was going to be like some sort of like animated, kind of grittier, Sin City kind of looking thing. Both of those reached development hell, but fortunately for us, HBO picked this up and ran with it. And Neil Druckmann, Craig Mazin, who directed one of the greatest pieces of television of all time in Chernobyl, got together and said, let's do this thing for real and do it for real. They did. So before we jump into the game, Cassia, you kind of briefly touched on it. I just want to know for sure where you were at. So had you watched any of like the playthrough of this game at all? Or were you just reading up on the story, or how familiar were you with it when you turned on episode 1?
so I knew like the overarching, like they start in Boston. Ellie was immune. They travel, cannibals happen, and then it ends in Salt Lake, and he ends up quote unquote saving her, kind of killing everyone in the hospital. So I knew that story. I knew about the giraffes,
Okay.
so yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, the giraffes were important, and I don't know. I'd have to go back. Dave, maybe you know for sure. This seems like something you might know. Was there a giraffe in every episode? There were a giraffe in a lot of the episodes.
There were definitely a few hidden giraffes. I know that I think it was the second episode, there was a giraffe stuffy that was on the bridge. And in, I think the 7th episode, there was a poster of a giraffe on the wall. There may have been others, but those were the two that I remember seeing, hinting at what was to come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember they stuck out to me, as someone who kind of knew the story for sure. So we get this first episode. They announced the series. Everything is looking good now. People like us, Al, Dave, myself, who played the game, we're familiar with the game. Obviously loved the story from the game, and part of that us holds that very dear, right? You play something like The Last of Us, you spend, I don't know, 20 to 30 hours with these characters. You really get the feeling for how these characters are going to work, and some people are excited about that getting an adaptation. Some people are hesitant about it getting an adaptation. Some people are, kind of lukewarm on it. Just we'll see how this goes. It's going to be another video game thing. It's probably not going to be that great, but I'll still have the game for my heart back there. Al, what do you think when they announced this was coming? Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey. What were kind of your initial thoughts when they announced the series?
So upon hearing who they had selected, Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, I didn't think that they had the look. I still don't. I don't think that visually that they are the part. I think that they do embody the essence, but I didn't find that out until, you can actually watch the show. So hearing who they were selecting, knowing that it was HBO, I was excited where it was going to go, but I still had some reservations. I did like Chernobyl. I thought that one was like a really great TV show, and a good pick for them to pair up with Craig Mazin again, because hey, here's kind of this apocalyptic event almost in actual U.S. or in world history, I should say, and here we've got like this, here we've got an actual post-apocalyptic event that happens in this video game series. So I was really attuned to a couple of the aspects, but I knew that with some of the things, it could go either way. You know, we had a really disappointing finale to Game of Thrones, and I was nervous that they were going to do a similar thing.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Some valid concerns. What about you, Dave? Were you excited about this? Were you hesitant or nervous about it in any way? Or what were your thoughts when you knew this was finally coming to TVs?
You know, I had heard about the movie adaptations and how they had gotten to table reads, and then it really just, never went anywhere. So I was always a little bit disappointed that I'm like, man, I want this story to be told. I want it to be told. So once I heard that it was coming to HBO, I was absolutely thrilled that it was getting a much longer series and it would be given the room to tell the story. And so definitely just satisfied all around. When I did hear Pedro Pascal, I was like, okay, escort mission daddy is his typecast. So a little bit, but other than that, I've been just pleased with it all around. So
awesome, yeah, same here. I'm very much kind of the mindset as someone who really loved this story and wanted to get out, into the world more. A lot of people bought The Last of Us. A lot of people played The Last of Us, but not as many people as just watched this HBO series. So for me, that's where I see the enjoyment. We talk about Knights of the Old Republic and why we would like that story to get out, and it's so more people can see it. So for example, the big thing for me in watching this was watching it with my wife, who's not someone who's going to play a video game and is not someone who's going to sit patiently for 25 hours while I play a video game for her to watch, but she will sit down on Sunday nights and watch an hour of The Last of Us. So seeing it kind of through her eyes as someone who didn't know the story was just amazing, and that was as great of an experience as playing through the game the first time. And then kind of in the medium of television, we get to explore the story a little bit. Some things are pretty beat for beat for what we saw in the game. Some things, take a little bit of artistic interpretation, and some things tell stories that, we didn't get in the game, get more fleshed out characters and things like that. So let's do this. Why don't we run through these episodes real quick? I don't want to get into super deep territory on these, but we'll kind of go through. I'll give a little bit of a synopsis, and then we can just kind of bounce around and say what we liked, how it compared to the game, what we liked in terms of the additions, subtractions, those kinds of things. So let's kick this off. Episode 1, coming out firing if you played the game the first 10 minutes, When You're Lost in the Darkness. So episode 1, yeah, it takes, with Joel and his daughter. Let's see what his IMDb says. It says 20 years after a fungal outbreak ravages the planet, survivors Joel and Tess are tasked with a mission that could change everything. So, Cassia, let's ask you first, because you never really played the game. You might have seen the first 10 minutes of the game. A lot of people, I think, saw that and were interested to see how that got adapted. But what did you think about the first episode here?
I haven't played the game ever, but I was familiar with the fact that you start, your point of view character is Sarah, Joel's daughter. And I thought they carried that over so well to the TV show. You think she's going to survive because she's a point of view character, and you kind of get to see the world through her eyes. And what I kind of liked is that this outbreak happened kind of before social media. So it was instead of 2013, before everyone had cell phones and smartphones and all that, it was 2003. So a lot of this stuff that would be instantaneous news, you kind of just hear about in the news, something's happening in Jakarta, Joel and Tommy don't really care, it's just on the news, and then you kind of get to see more of Sarah's character when she goes into the town to get the watch fixed, and the couple, I believe they're from Lebanon, I think, they were concerned, and they're we need to close up early, and you kind of just see and hear a lot of of an army presence. And then I know a zombie apocalypse is going to happen, but it's still so terrifying when you see Nana and what she's doing,
Yep.
So yeah,
the dog's just sitting there looking at her. Yeah, that was horrifying for sure. Even if you know exactly what's coming. But Dave, you're very familiar with the story in this world. This episode, probably more than the other ones, was more kind of beat for beat for that. Everyone wanted to see, kind of that first 10 minutes with Sarah there. But some differences, we got to spend some more time with Sarah. We got to, follow her on her journey to get the watch, and then kind of the way that was handled, and, just some subtle differences there. What did you think about the first episode? Now, you'd had the game, you had the hype, and now finally you got to sit down and watch it.
Gosh, as somebody who played the original game probably between 7 to 10 times, it starts off with a cold open that just sets the tone for the world. That, so right off the bat, I'm coming in and being like, okay, this is going to be something different. It's not going to be beat for beat. It's introducing something new. And then they cut to the opening scenes, and one nice little Easter egg is that the very, very first camera shot in Sarah's room is the curtain waving, and that is actually the load screen for the video game. So I start saying, oh yes, I know this. So there's some familiarity and there's some freshness there. And I think that's just, kind of just the right mix for getting the excitement level and planting a hook for the fans of the game. That first segment with Sarah, you get so much more of her story. And the actress, I really love the job that she did, that by the time, you get to the end of her segment, you've spent almost half an hour with her, and it's really, really, it's really affecting, more so than even when the original game came out. And I remember playing through the game the first time. My wife was watching over my shoulder, and she had to leave the room. She's like, this is too much, like worst nightmare material. So she did eventually come back and want to play through it, but she had to prepare herself. And then seeing it in live action was just so much more affecting. So it kind of, after that first episode, it really made me feel like, man, this is going to be a bit more brutal, a bit rougher of a ride at times, a bit more emotional. And it was, so.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said, with the actual human actors going through this. Is you don't even feel like the disconnect of having the controller. So it's much more visceral and much more affecting. And you brought up a really good point, Dave. Kind of that cold open of like the 1950s, like I don't know, kind of interview news kind of thing there. That was brilliant. I really liked that because that's something that you don't get in the game too much. You can kind of go around and read the journals and stuff and kind of clue yourself in on the backstory, but it's not really presented to you in that way. So I thought that was really great kind of choice and way to set it up and way to lay the groundwork, especially for people who have never played the game, which is a really tough challenge. But Al, let's go over to you. First episode, we're getting into the story now. What did you think here as you finally got to take in the first hour-ish of The Last of Us?
Yeah, I think it was maybe 80 minutes long for the very first episode, and I thought it was well paced. It was totally what I would want. We were just talking about that intro to the very, very start of the show, and I had just barely seen Dawn of the Dead, and I realized that the infected are not zombies. They are their own thing, but in all intents and purposes, they are very zombie-like. And starting off the TV series with kind of this similar homage of, here's somebody on the news who's talking about how dangerous this kind of zombie-ish outbreak would be. It was just like a really nice kind of homage to, other people who have laid out similar storylines. And then, they go right into Sarah's story, and Sarah was such a captivating character. I really did like her so much better than in the game. You were almost kind of hoping that she would just, are we doing spoilers? I think that.
Yeah, go for it. If you're listening to this and you haven't watched it, that's on you at this point. I mean, I did. I waited a week to watch the last episode, so I can't talk too much. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. We'll have the spoiler warning up top. So.
I was hoping she wouldn't die, that something else would happen, but it's so central to the story that it was kind of captivating. I think that the first episode and the third episode, which we'll talk about a little bit later, were probably the two best paced episodes in all of the show.
Yeah, it definitely kind of set the tone. It set this level of brutality as you make that time jump and you see kind of Joel there and as disconnected as he's been, and we learn a little bit more about his story. But yeah, it was an amazing way to get this show started. Like I said, in a very challenging thing, because everyone is going to be sitting down to watch that first episode, and if you played the games, you know all of this stuff. So how do you keep it fresh and interesting and pay homage to the games enough that it's not going to kind of ostracize the people who did not play the games, right? You bring both of these people together, and I think that the first episode was amazing and doing just that. And I think didn't Neil Druckmann directed, or no, he directed the second one. So Craig Mazin directed the introductory there, the first episode, and then Neil Druckmann directs the second episode, Infected. So after escaping the QZ, Joel and Tess clash over Ellie's fate while navigating the ruins of a long abandoned Boston. So I really liked kind of the end of that. You have Joel killing the Fedra agent, which was very visceral, and it kind of tied back in to him having that flashback of Sarah. That was kind of where we were left at the end of the first episode, but now they have Ellie. They know that she is infected, and they don't know what to do about that. Any thoughts from anyone, Cassia? Or what about episode 2 here? We're getting into the story now a little bit more.
So episode 1 was like a lot of a downer, and then the second episode was also a downer.
They're all a lot of kind of downers, to be honest. That's
at least the third episode was a little bit happier, but I was like, maybe because I started the series a bit late, so I think like when I first started, there were 3 episodes out. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just try to catch up. Maybe I can watch all 3. Then like I think I watched episodes 1 and 2 back to back, and I was like, that was too much emotionally.
It's too much. It's too much. Yeah, you have to take a break.
So it was sad to see Tess die, but it kind of seemed like, how like the previous seasons like of Game of Thrones, like the earlier seasons, like more characters, it was like you didn't know like who would live, who would die. And it's like in the first 2 episodes we lose Sarah and then Tess, so it just seemed like they weren't playing around and anyone could die.
Yeah, absolutely. The stakes are getting pretty high. We're getting to see the clickers and learn about how they operate within this world a little bit more, which is interesting. Al, what do you think about episode 2, Infected? We're making our way out of Boston. We lose Tess. Any highlights or any thoughts about the second episode?
Yeah, I mean, it followed the storyline pretty close in this one. It didn't seem to have as much division from the actual game in this part, but I did think that we saw at the very end the way that the infected, how they work, how they operate in this new TV adaptation of the world. And so we saw that it's really it operates not just through the spores and like, oh, I've been infected through the things in the air, but rather through like bites and like they do that very intimate looking kiss at the very end just to show that like, hey, here's this, like the tendrils are kind of reaching out. They have kind of their own life and aspect to them. And, it was another delicious scoop of ice cream on top of the first episode. Just another heaping of it, just a little bit shorter.
Yeah, it was very much kind of a continuation of that first episode. There as we get another, kind of going over to I guess to Indonesia there and talking to the scientists. So we get another kind of cold open there on this one too. Dave, what did you think about episode 2, Infected, moving our way through Boston here?
Episode 2 is the one that I think feels the most video gamey, and maybe that's because Neil Druckmann directed it, but it follows kind of the story of them crossing through this town very, very, very closely, and there is another death with Tess holding off the infected, so to speak, so Joel and Ellie can sneak away. And so don't get it starts to feel okay. Don't get too attached to anybody in this series.
Right. Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed the episode, but it was at times felt a little bit video gamey. And I think it's one thing about this that kind of stuck with me, or that I think back after, now that we're done with the series, is they did introduce this idea that all the the infected are connected through this fungal network, right? Similar to how funguses can actually communicate in the forest, which is very neat and intriguing as an idea. And it was used kind of as a trigger to trigger the whole, infected horde coming after them. But one thought that I did have is that idea didn't get revisited too much throughout the rest of the series. So it was something that was very intriguing when they first introduced it, but then later it was like, did we really get that again, or was that just a device for that one episode? So it was interesting, but generally really enjoyed this episode, except for that creepy kiss. So, fungus kiss.
The fungus kiss was a tough one to watch for sure. And rest in peace, Tess. I really liked. You'd mentioned kind of the video game elements of it, and yeah, I think it was Neil Druckmann, kind of paying homage to all the team that worked on that. You get a couple of things that are just shot for shot. I think there's one of them like climbing down the ladder as they're coming out of that museum or whatever they're at. It's the same. He's bandaging. Joel bandages his arm, and it's the same exact sound that plays in the game when you do that. So there were a couple things like that, but I really liked again this intro section where they're talking to the scientist in Indonesia, and she just says, start bombing the cities. We went from 0 to 60 just like that, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's, I think, even something in the final episode, where when Joel says something about them bombing the cities. So it gives you a very good reason why they're going across country here, and they're going city to city while all these places are in such disrepair after 20 years. 20 years is a long time, but to have things be looking the way that they are, and to find out it's because we're trying to bomb the infected back, as it were. So we're staying pretty close with the game up until this point. We're going to take a bit of a diversion here. An incredible hour of television, episode 3, long time. This one was written by Craig Mazin, directed by Peter Hoare, but we're going to go and meet up with Bill and Frank and learn a little bit about them. Now, this is not a story you really get in the game. You find out that Bill and Frank were together, but it's not ended amicably, I guess, in the game. But this story right here, it does an amazing job of exploring that relationship. Cassia, episode 3, long time. You're a fan of Love. What did you think about this one?
Oh, I love Love, and I mean, I hadn't played the game, so I didn't know that episode 3 was a change, but it was lovely to see, and Nick Offerman loved him in Parks and Recreation, and it's kind of cool to see him play kind of a similar character, one who's seems like a prepper, libertarian, but also happens to be gay, and then you get to see a love story unfold, and it's interesting because he begins as such a survivalist, but you get to see how love changes him. So he's concerned about other people. He develops sort of friendships with Tess and Joel, beautifies the city, rather than just surviving. He's making a life with someone else, and it's kind of interesting because kind of what The Last of Us, the thesis is about is love can be great, but it can also has ugly sides too, and a survivalist living in an apocalypse and everything they could ever want, really, no government, all that, and then he changes to wanting to die with someone else. It just is amazing to see what love did. It totally transformed him.
Yeah, absolutely. The love story here is beautiful, and I guess you could make the argument that it doesn't really propel our story of The Last of Us forward, but it definitely propels the theme of The Last of Us and what The Last of Us means from a relationship standpoint, from a humanity standpoint, as we're going through this traumatic ordeal of the infected and governments and cities collapsing. So, Dave, long time. What did you think about our Bill and Frank story?
Gosh, this was just a lovely departure, and something that a lot of people didn't see coming. If you didn't cry during this one, you have no heart almost. It really did a good job, and I have seen some people have complained that it felt like it was a side story that wasn't necessary or whatever. I really think that it was important for giving Joel that motivation to really carry on, to take Ellie with him, because at this point he had always just been escorting. Okay, just to the other side of town. Okay, just over to Bill and Frank's, and now the scope of their adventure is going to expand greatly. And coming across the note, when they read the note, understand what happened to Bill and Frank, he really has a moment where he's like, "Yep, I need to take this the next step further," and this was just a lovely way to get them there.
Yeah, exactly. It does do a really good job of, exploring what's having, any sort of relationship could be for Joel, who's been, 20 years, likely on, right, cold and alone. He's not even, seen Tommy for how long at this point, working our way out to him. But Al, long time. What were your thoughts about the Bill and Frank episode here?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I would say that this is one of the best paced episodes. It's just such an awesome experience to kind of get this almost like a minute version of the overall story. These two people who are unlikely companions, end up together, and obviously, Bill and Frank have a more romantic relationship, and Ellie and Joel have just a father-daughter type relationship. But I still think that you get that essence of love and being willing to change. Obviously, it has kind of a different ending, rather than when one person needs to die, the other person's like, well, I'm not gonna keep going on. I'm gonna die with you. Joel's going to take the opposite way. He's like, when Ellie needs to die, then I'm just going to prevent her from dying. So I think that there's a good way with that. I think that this was also a moment for me that I noticed how they really diverted from the video gamey nature. Like we mentioned, that second episode kind of felt very video gamey. And if you play through this section of the game, you're doing all this stuff to kind of help Bill to travel across the town, and there's some infected areas, and his little compound area is defended, but you have to kind of navigate your way through this little neighborhood and through the backyards and stuff. And I thought that this part really took that part out in a very effective way, showing, hey, here's how you're going to get from this to this and still tell a really great story. So I was a big fan of this episode.
Yeah, exactly, because you need things like this in a TV show where we're having 9 episodes, so it's roughly 9 hours of storytelling versus, a 25-hour video game. You really have to propel, kind of the emotional stakes and the way that these characters are learning, because you don't have the length of time to spend with them. So yeah, episode 3 was incredible. Nick Offerman was incredible, but everyone already says that. So I'm going to say Murray Bartlett as Frank is incredible. Murray Bartlett does not get enough credit for playing Frank in the episode. Absolutely spectacular. So kudos to you, sir. And yeah, I guess like you said, Dave, the moral of the story is, Joel's learning about, what a potential, any sort of, feeling of having a relationship, or, protecting someone or taking care of someone could look like going forward. And that's very important. And we're going to get to kind of the real crux of where this shift really happens for Joel as we make our way to Kansas City in episodes 4. And I'm going to go ahead and throw these ones together, 4 and 5. So Please Hold My Hand and Endure and Survive, as we're spending some time in Kansas City. A little bit of innocence lost for Ellie, potential at a new friendship, little dose of happiness and childlike innocence before reality gets thrown back in our face. Dave, let's start with you. Kansas City. We're pulling up there. We know it's going to be bad news. The cars are in the road, and Joel decides to not just drive around them, but to drive through the city. Bad move, Joel. Come on. But what did you think about the Kansas City section here? Anything really stand out to you in terms of the character development or the way that Ellie, Bella Ramsey is really coming into this role now, I think, in this section? What do you think?
There was something new that they introduced in this section from the game, and that's that they made Sam deaf. And it was really beautiful seeing that, he was struggling. He had his own way of communicating and his own way of developing that communication and developing that trust with Ellie later, towards the end of the fifth episode, when he reveals that he's been bit. And that was just so beautiful, that seeing Ellie trying to step up and save him, and in her own childlike way, her own childlike naivety of trying to do cut her hand and share her blood, so to speak. And it was just so affecting what happened. There's a point between these episodes where I was just like, gosh, this is just going to keep breaking our heart over and over and over. And it's just, it's almost unrelenting. There's a certain amount that I love this so much, but I was also almost starting to get a little bit worn out by the show. And I'm like, man, I'm signing up every week to get just beat up emotionally with how rough these deaths are. You fall in love with these new characters, you fall in love with the story that they're telling, and you just have them ripped from you, as soon as you start to care. And so it was a little bit tough, but absolutely beautiful, a lot of the things that they did, and I definitely enjoyed all this. And in some ways it was a high point, but in some ways it was also a point where I was starting to feel a little bit worn out by the show. But love it all the way through.
I had to pair the show with a few fun comedies and animated shows. Because the first two episodes, kind of I think were the hardest for me, and then it's the third episode, I'm like, okay. I mean, they die in the end, but it was on their terms, and then 4 and 5 were just do you love these brothers? Yeah, well, we're gonna just not let them live. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely needed every minutes of that week between episodes to kind of decompress and wrap your head around the way that you were feeling. Because, like you said, Dave, and on one hand, it's absolutely brutal and difficult, and kicks you in the heart for an hour every Sunday. But on the other hand, there's a lot of beauty to it, I guess, in the way the characters are, kind of taking these lessons and learning from them, and you see kind of their growth and realization. And like I said, I think Ellie kind of in these two sections does a lot of that. We see her, come to Joel's aid, kill that guy. So you see her kind of lose her innocence, but she gets kind of the shot at redemption when she meets Sam, right? And we're down in, I don't know, it's the sewer area or something. And you see them playing, just being kids for one last night, which is, just makes that next scene all the harder to watch there. But what do you think, Al? What do you think about this Kansas City section?
I think this is absolutely important for Ellie's growth as a character, of what her resolve to really want to be able to sacrifice herself, because she wanted to help out this kid, and it's not just a matter of sharing your blood with him. You really have to kind of give a lot more in order to be able to to perceivably be able to help out. And so I think that this section, it's heartbreaking, but it's 100% necessary into understanding Ellie's thought as for why she really wants to just kind of let herself be used for science and whatnot. The other thing that's really interesting about these two episodes, it's the only two episodes that we really get a more in-depth look at the clickers, at the infected creatures. All the other ones, I mean, we were kind of missing them throughout the rest of the show. We have moments here and there where there's one or two, but this is where we actually see them just kind of mob all the people in Kansas City. We see I think that this like kind of showed an aspect that the production team just couldn't keep up with, and so that they probably had to like pare it down to just these like 2 episodes. But I thought that that was like a really great moment that we finally got to see. They're just coming out in droves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very kind of exciting. Obviously when they announced the game, we were all interested to see what the clickers were going to look like and how they were going to interact with that. But The Last of Us, and kind of the same vein as any great quote unquote zombie story, is really less about the zombies than it is about the human interactions. And I think too, obviously we get the stuff with Henry and Sam, which is incredible. I mentioned some innocence lost there with Ellie, and Joel kind of coming to this realization that, maybe he is seeing some sort of daughter, maybe in Ellie, and able to protect her and not able to protect her. I think he has a really great line of, you're just a kid. You shouldn't have to do this. You shouldn't have to see this, which is really just wrenching. But on the flip side of that, here in the Kansas City section, you get like Kathleen and Perry. So we're starting to see kind of the story from different perspectives too, which is something that I really liked about the show, because you don't get to explore that in the game too much, right? You're Joel, so you're pretty much single focused on mission accomplished. So you're not seeing kind of other perspectives. So I really liked kind of the introduction of those characters and those different viewpoints, and we pick up on a couple of those as we go through here, seeing some different ideologies, seeing the way people are looking at things and stuff. And I thought that was just a really kind of interesting character study, and really kind of broadened the scope of what The Last of Us, the story, could be. All right, so we've made it our way out of Kansas City, which is good. Good job, I guess. We got out of there, and finally we're going to reunite with Tommy. Episode 6, Kin. This was I think all of these might have been written by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. Jasmila Zbanek directs this one here, as we're finally making it to Jackson, Wyoming, and getting to see Jackson realized in real life. That was pretty amazing. I don't know where they filmed this at, if it was on location somewhere or if it was just some set design, but I really liked the look and the feel of Jackson. Cassia, what do you think? We're reunited, and it feels so good with Tommy there.
I believe it was filmed in Alberta, or at least somewhere in Canada, and I know Canada is a large
lovely
country, so sorry to our Canadian listeners. But yeah, I didn't realize they visited Jackson in the game, but it seemed like a nice, commune. They're literally communists in Wyoming, which is like maybe the part of The Last of Us that like I think is the most fantastical, but it kind of seems like an awkward reunion, but it was kind of nice to see there's at least a part of the world where things are thriving, like maybe a little bit more semblance of normalcy, and they have running water, and I'm like, that's cool. So it was nice. It's kind of like 1, 2 were hard, and then you kind of have a little bit of a nicer third episode, and then 4 and 5 kind of downers, and then 6 is like a little nicer.
That's right. Yeah, they have running water. They've got gardens. They've got a fully stocked bar, which is good. They've got a movie theater, electricity. So everything is good. We've made our way here. Now Joel has kind of this internal crisis to deal with. I think coming off of what we learned in Kansas City, and the things that Ellie's going to have to keep having to see, and how well he's going to be able to protect her. That's starting to come into play. Is he going to not necessarily try to pawn her off, but to do what's best for her, to do what's best for him, to do what's best for humanity? I don't know, but we're exploring all of that stuff here in Kin. So, Al, what did you think about this one? This was a little bit slower, a little bit more intimate, as we're seeing kind of the conversations between Joel and Tommy. But what did you think about this episode here?
I think that this is the episode where Pedro actually gets to shine with his own acting chops. I think that most of the other episodes we see him acting as the gruff, tough guy who has like another exterior or whatnot. Like the tough exterior, soft nougaty interior that he hasn't shown yet. And this is the one that I think if Pedro is going to be nominated for anything it would be for this episode. You really get to see some of that inner conflict kind of come out and finally rise to the brim, so we can understand where he's coming from, what he's kind of feeling. And I think that's kind of the biggest, most important part of it, is just that, wow, we finally have cracked we've cracked his little hard outer shell, and this is what's coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ellie's learning about that too, about why he has this tough outer shell, right? As she's given the information here going forward, that Joel had lost his daughter, so she's starting to see him through a completely different lens as well. Dave, this was a big discussion episode here on the Last of Us chat we're in. But what did you think about Ken? We made it to Wyoming. What'd you think about this episode, and why do you think Joel was trying to make the decisions that he made, and he ultimately changed his mind? What do you think?
This episode, while there's less, physical action, they're not fighting off any infected. They're not really getting into, shootouts with hunters or other groups. The fireworks are really emotional. Definitely, the brother dynamic, Joel, the way Joel yells out for Tommy as they enter, there's definitely a softness to it there. And pretty quickly that facade falls apart as some of these old resentments start to come up. And so the way that Tommy says, just because life ended for you doesn't mean it had to end to me, end for me. I paraphrase, so, but that concept, that emotional, the fireworks in this episode are just so emotional. But at the same time, this life in Jackson is something hopeful. It's something that is portrayed as what could be, that the life that they've had in the past, Joel having, a fairly seedy background where, it's clear he had to kill people. He had been on both sides of these, heists and holdups. It's clear that there's a new way, there's another way that they could live their lives, and they can survive in this, post-apocalyptic world. So, it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that, and it gives them a little bit of hope for where they could be, that they could have a life together, that they could have a life settling down and getting back to some normality. So.
Yeah, I think is kind of really important, especially coming out of the Kansas City area. And I wanted to mention, too, kind of in the opening of this, we get Graham Greene and Elaine Miles playing Marlon and Florence there, who we stumbled across in the snow on our way to Tommy's. And, yeah, just another glimpse of the way, that people have dealt with the last 20 years of, this outbreak, this epidemic that's been going on and has completely changed the world, and how some people are still able to kind of carry on and live their lives. I just think it's interesting to see kind of those takes there as we wrap up Ken. And then we get to I don't know, one of the best episodes for me. This was the best. This came from some DLC content, so you may not have played that even if you played the game, so maybe you didn't know the story at all, but that is episode 7, Left Behind, directed by Liza Johnson, which takes place in the most amazing looking set I've ever seen on television. That mall was incredible. Good job to however many hundreds of people made that thing work. But Cassia, you probably like going to the mall, playing Mortal Kombat 2. What'd you think about this field trip that Ellie and Riley took on their last night together?
I wonder if we can get a Robin Sparkles "Let's Go to the Mall," like little sound bite in there when we're editing, But the mall looked exactly, well, not exactly, but like back in the days when like people went to the malls before everyone just got everything now. Online, but it brought me back, and in this iteration, like Civilization stopped in 2003, so it kind of brought me back. I think there was even an American Girl doll store, so that was funny. It triggered a lot of memories I'd forgotten, but I'd heard about the DLC, and uh it was interesting because that DLC kind of revealed that Ellie was a lesbian, and that was kind of like new ground for video game characters. Like, I mean, we talk about like Knights of the Old Republic on most of our regular episodes, and that had like the first uh, lesbian character as well in 2003, but they kind of had to suppress a lot of that because it was
Hmm.
2003 when that game came out. But uh, I believe it was it 2014 or 2013 that the DLC came out. But
I don't have that right here. I assume it probably came out in 2014.
yeah,
Outside of the remaster would be my guess, but
yeah. So it was just interesting to see like kind of like what steps are like now being taken. Like The Last of Us was a very mainstream successful game. So that was cool to see more representation and kind of get some tragic backstory for Ellie. I think like the episode realized the DLC great, but for me it kind of felt a little bit like the weakest episode of the season. Maybe like if they just showed Ellie having to kill Riley in the end, I think that would have like kind of made the story like feel more complete for me. It just kind of felt like I was just waiting for
okay.
the final emotion. But sometimes it's like when you have the pre-existing story, you try to get everything the same in some ways, but I don't know. For me, it just kind of seemed like not much happened like in the present. Like, and I know that's the point. It's a flashback, but for me, I still like the episode, but I just thought it was the weakest.
Okay, interesting. Cassia needed more heartache in her 9 episodes. I like that.
Yeah,
I actually like that they didn't show it because she does then address it later when she's telling her truths with Joel, and they're sharing those story moments here as we get to the end of the show. But Left Behind. First off, Al, Dave, did either of you play the Left Behind DLC? That's
Yeah.
a yes from
Uh-huh.
Dave.
I did.
That's a yes
Yes.
from that's a yes from Al. This episode is really important in kind of laying the groundwork, and I think it'll be important as we get into The Last of Us Part 2 as we go in to our next season here. But really kind of illustrating who Ellie is, and kind of kind of her mindsets and the hangups that she may have going forward, and how she feels about Fedra, because it opens up kind of within the confines of the school and the way that she's interacting there. But Dave, Left Behind, I thought it was great. Cassia needed more heartache in it, but what did you think about
I
it?
hated it.
Oh gosh, I don't think I could take any more heartache in this series. The genuinely enjoyed this episode, and I think I'd like to speak a little bit about kind of the flashbacks to Fedra, because that is something that is not shown in the games. There is a comic book series that was released shortly after the original game came out that showed some of those moments. But I think between the previous episode, Ken, and this, we're being given different portraits of what life could be like in this post-apocalyptic world. In Ken, you're being shown the life in Jackson, and kind of a commune. In Left Behind, it starts with really showing us what life can be like under Fedra, and some of the inequality that is there. That Ellie gets in trouble, and she's being given the, hey, you could be an officer, or you could be shoveling shit. Contrast that with Riley, who's being shown every bit, if not more, disruptive, and she's being told, no, you're only going to get sewer duty. You don't have a happy future here. So there's some inequality that's being shown in the way that these two types of society that could form in the post-apocalyptic world come together. So I felt that dynamic was really, really interesting. Again, more heartbreak. Love seeing the relationship between Riley and Ellie. The way that Ellie really kind of looked up to Riley, and Riley could kind of dish it back a little bit if there was anything, if she didn't feel like Ellie was following along. So I enjoyed the dynamic all the way through. That you gave some credits to all the people who worked on that mall. If anybody listened to the Last of Us podcast where they interviewed the interviews with Druckmann and Craig Mazin, they actually say that was a single story mall, and so much of that was digital effects. They would draw a blue line on the wall and say everything from here up is digital effects. So a lot of that mall sequence was added in post. So very interesting to see that.
Yeah, it looks spectacular, and I really like this episode. I liked the pacing of it. I liked the story narrative of it. I liked exploring Ellie's backstory in that way a little bit, and seeing basically how she is coming to be the young woman that we're seeing with Joel now here as we're going through the story. I thought that stuff was all really great, and I liked like I said, I liked that they kind of held that penultimate moment of their final night together until like I said, she's telling Joel her truths. What about you, Al? What did you think about Left Behind in this story here?
I am a fan of this episode. I do think it's good. I think that what it also kind of gave us a little bit more homage to like video gamey things. Like we see the bomb that like it's like the little explosive that the Fireflies have entrusted to Riley, and so it was kind of cool to see little props like that pop up in there again. And we just like, oh yeah, there we get that little homage back to the game. This time, kind of seeing their little explosives when it's not in the game, it does look a little bit silly, and so we're just like, okay, yeah, it looks like just a bunch of loose wires attached to something, but sure, I go along with it just because it's kind of fun. I do think that they overall did create another. It's a nice cohesive story that you can kind of tell just on its own. So it doesn't. It's kind of able to be inserted anywhere into the story, and I'm glad that they kept it as, instead of just like an epilogue to the game, here it's inserted into a place where it feels like it reaches maximum potency for us. Like if they put it in any earlier, we probably wouldn't care as much about Ellie and wanting to know some of this stuff, but after they've kind of provided a little bit of that mystique behind her of like, what did she come from? What was she kind of going through? Why is her attitude kind of sour at times and kind of this other way at other times? I think that they put it right into the perfect spot so that it could actually do the most emotional, just the most emotional damage to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the way kind of they constructed this episode, because they really strung you along, because the entire time you're like, something real bad's going to happen. And you're just waiting for it the whole episode, but they keep stringing it along, and you just have that feeling of dread coming over you. I will say that at the end of episode 6, Joel gets stabbed, and you don't know if he's going to live. And at the end of episode 7, you still don't know if he's going to live. So my wife did not care for that, I will say. She was needing some resolution on making sure that Joel was going to be okay. And Joel is okay, just barely when we get to episode 8. And things are going to take a real dark turn here for this one. So we've got When We Are in Need by Ali Abbasi. So yeah, still trying to take care of Joel. Ellie is going to go and make a deal with the devil, as it were, to get him some medicine, and that's going to change her kind of prerogative and outlook on life. If she had any sort of glimmers of humanity, of hope left in her before, those are certainly gone, as as she's been through the ringer in this one. So, Dave, what do you think? When we are in need, we've made it to our crazy cult place with what's his name, James. What'd you think about this one? The way they set it up, because this is a very pivotal moment in the game. What'd you think about the episode?
Really, this was a great episode for me, and it really felt like this was Bella's chance to really shine. To show the range and the range of emotions, and give her chance to kind of stand on her own, even from Joel a little bit, because she goes through her own trials and tribulations throughout this episode, and Joel, while he's still kind of in recovery, he tries to get to her. He doesn't end up being the one who saves her. It twists that expectation of kind of the hero point of view, stepping in and saving her, and he doesn't get there in time. What he does get there in time for is to give her the emotional support as she stumbles out from having a rather violent interaction with David. And there's some looks on faces. There's so much that goes on here. But Bella Ramsey really does a fantastic job. So, genuinely really enjoyed the episode. David in this is so creepy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, David and James, they're the worst. And I really like this. I also really like this set because they're taking their meeting there in that abandoned steakhouse. I thought that looked great. And yeah, Bella Ramsey is just absolutely phenomenal in this. We mentioned kind of Pedro Pascal coming into his own. Bella's had some moments of it, but here she's having to be much more visceral and stuff in this role. So Al, what did you think here about When We Are in Need?
What I do like this one. I think it's a well pieced together episode, and I think that they gave us some nice surprises. I mean, you mentioned that there's the character James, played by Troy Baker, who that's Joel from the games, and so it was kind of nice to be able to spot him and be like, oh wow, he's here. He's kind of getting to reprise a different role, but still in the same game. I think David is a great character for us to kind of just all lump our hate against. There are so many other people who have very conflicted stories, and we can understand that maybe we don't like that Marlene wants to essentially have Ellie killed for the good of mankind, or that we may not like Joel's kind of we may not agree with aspects of Joel. There's a bunch of different characters in there that you can kind of disagree with on little technical bits, but David just kind of gives us a point where we just get to throw all our hate against one bad dude for a little bit. Here's this dude, he gets to even have the evil bad guy monologue, and I think that's really kind of a fun element. It does feel very video gamey in some of that aspect, but I think it fits in really well of being able to adapt it and keep that character in there without it ever feeling too video gamey in this aspect.
Yeah, this was a big one for me in terms of just that, Al. And in terms of the video game, I was interested to see how they were going to handle that opening kind of sequence, and then I was interested in how were they going to handle this stuff with David. As I mentioned, it's a very pivotal part of the video game. He's quote unquote like a boss fight, for lack of a better term there. So I was really interested to see how this was going to play out, and how kind of into the psyche of Ellie we were going to get, and where exactly they went with it. And it stayed pretty true to what we got in the game there. And obviously Ellie's coming out on the other side, bathed in blood there, so to speak. So Cassia, what did you think, having never played through this section? This comes at you with a surprise. What did you think about this one?
So I knew in the video game there were cannibals, but I didn't know if they were going to adapt it for television. So I was kind of okay, so this kind of seems to be an isolated kind of theocracy a little bit. I guess you could say it is a cult because they're all kind of following one guy, So it's is this the cannibal one? And it's someone asks like, "What is this?" and they say it's venison, I'm like, "Sus, like, is it venison?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I trust this guy. He just seems so calculating and like persuasive, like a eloquent speaker and all that. And he kind of just seemed like very, as I said, like calculating, and how he kind of managed the area. Like I just said, like I don't trust this guy, but he is convincing and persuasive. And like you said, Bella Ramsey uh, really acted the hell out of this one. And I thought the first thing I saw her in, I think her debut was actually in Game of Thrones, actually, as Lyanna Mormont. And I think she featured in seasons 6 through 8, I want to say. And I just like was kind of amazed because she was a very young child actor, but she was very, very capable. And I also saw her in the show Becoming Elizabeth, which I have mixed feelings about, but her performance, like I was like, oh, like she's on track to really do something amazing. And I think this show will kind of get her on everyone's map. And we really kind of just got to see her kind of act every emotion, like fear and just kind of overcoming David at the end, and like just kind of like kill the crap out of him. And we can all get behind that. And yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can definitely all get behind getting rid of David for sure. But yeah, it's not without trauma caused to Ellie, and we pick right up on that as we get into our final episode here, as she's very kind of withdrawn and quiet. She's definitely had to process this change that she's had to take on emotionally to survive, to make it to the final destination here of Salt Lake City. So we've got Ali Abbasi directed episode 9, Look for the Light. Dave, this was what we were all waiting for, right? This is the end of our story for now, anyway. The end of the game. We just wanted to go see the giraffe. But what were your thoughts before we get into the episode? Let's do this. What were your thoughts going into the final episode? Was there anything that you were really hoping for, or really excited about, or just kind of your general thoughts, I guess, going into the last week, knowing it was the last time we were going to get this pair on our TVs for a while?
Something that I've definitely enjoyed the journeys that we've seen. They've been so true to the show. I've been enjoying it all the way. The one thought that I've had so far, before watching the finale, is I'm like, this is really giving me more context for so many of the story beats throughout the game. I'm definitely looking forward to going back and playing the game again and seeing if all those thematic elements that I think they were in the game, but I think they were really hammered in beat by beat through the episodic format of the television show. So I was really feeling really good about it. I was thinking, I was like, it's been a while. It's been all the way since episode 1 since we've seen Marlene, and people have probably forgotten about it. Forgotten about her and, kind of her role in the Fireflies and so on. And so I actually had this theory before this show even started. I'm like, if there's an episode, if I was to write episode 9, I would write it with an opening scene, like either a cold open or like a 10-minute segment of Marlene with Anna, or with Ellie's mom, showing some backstory, so you can have some weight, really, to reintroduce Marlene since it's been so long, and then also to give some weight to the decisions that Marlene will make, to say, hey, to proceed with finding a cure, we need to sacrifice Ellie. And if she's shown that she has this relationship with her from the start, it's really going to give a lot more weight to what happens, And so I was really hoping that we would see that, and they did. They really came back. They really ended up writing the episode almost like how I pictured it in my head. So I was very, very pleased seeing everything there.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives so much more weight for that final decision that Joel ends up making. So, Al, episodes 1 through 8. What were your kind of thoughts and feelings about the series going into this final episode? Final for now, anyways.
Right. I thought I was a little bit surprised that they decided to end it on 9 episodes, and so I did feel like there was maybe. Not that I wanted them to add in more filler, but I just felt like, I was kind of hoping for a big round 10. So I was a little bit kind of surprised that we were already at that point by this point in the TV show. And so I was very content with what we got. And I was sitting probably at like an 8 out of 10 for the first 8 episodes, and I was ready for this one to kind of come in and, finish it off strong.
Okay. What about you, Cassia? What were your kind of thoughts going through the series as we made our way into the final episode here?
I think I kind of wanted one more episode, but I think what happened is the pilot, When You're Lost in the Darkness, was 2 episodes combined. That's why it felt like when I was first watching it, like, does this episode ever end? There's like 50 more minutes, But going to the finale, I knew what happened, but I listened to like I mentioned, I listened to the Last of Us like official podcast that HBO releases, and it has the creators talking about it, and like I knew that everyone loved the story for The Last of Us. I'm like, it really is good, but like I kind of just didn't get it. Mm-hmm. But when he kind of finally explained, like, the thesis is like we're kind of talking about love, like the good sides of love, but also the ugly parts of love, like, and then that's how they're saying, like, sometimes like love can cause bad things, like parents' love for a child, like would they put that above like the world's sake, and like that's what Joel does in the finale in the hospital. And I kind of finally got it, because like it's kind of like this a video game. It's like, of course he saves like the person who needs rescuing in the end, but it kind of finally clicked for me. Like, it was kind of eerie to see like Joel like shooting down so many people in the hospital. We understood why he did it, but some of the people were surrendering, and it's like I really didn't know if he was going to like shoot the nurses, and it's like, oh, he killed the doctor. Oh, ooh, like it was just a little bit too real for me. But the most important part about the finale are the giraffes.
The giraffes, yeah, the giraffes are definitely the most important part, and that's an amazing part in the game, and it's an amazing part in the series too. Seeing that and the wonderment of it. Dave, the last episode, what were kind of your thoughts then? We made it all the way through our journey, and now Joel's going to have to make kind of this ultimate decision. But what did you think about this last episode of The Last of Us?
Well, I definitely enjoyed this episode. There were still a couple points that I had with it, little points of contention. One is, I really wish we had seen a scene between Marlene and maybe the doctor, just explaining, saying, hey, maybe the doctor really saying, look, we've got to do X, Y, Z to take care of it, and show Marlene really, being like having a moment and then making that decision. Yep, go through with it. Well, I think it would have given a little more weight to Marlene, Marlene's decisions, and I think I really feel like it would have helped pull some of the elements of the story together. And I think that for somebody who wasn't familiar with the story from playing the video game before, I feel like it would have given a little more context to the face-off a little bit between Marlene and Joel at the end in the parking lot. that's probably the main one. And while I love the finale, the actual end in the game, when I played through it the first time, it was jaw on the floor. Oh my God, did they just do this? And like, he lied to her. She said okay. It cuts to the amazing soundtrack, the guitar, and like, I remember we were just floored. My wife and I, when I was playing through this, where she's watching along with me. You've spent so many hours with these characters, you know, in the point of view, walking through each of these beats, and it cuts to black like that. It's like, oh man, this was affecting. In the show, I feel like it was almost all there. It was probably as there as you could hope for, but maybe it's because my own expectation of it, or maybe my own understanding of it, you know, having played it so many times. It was something that did take me, that I did feel like it lacked just a little bit less punch. And so, that's, this wasn't my favorite episode of the series, although, I definitely, you know, enjoyed all of the episodes. This was one where I just had slightly higher expectations. Now, this show was probably always going to let me down in some way because I had such high expectations going in. But yeah, I think that's how I feel about that one.
Yeah, you bring up a couple of good points, and I think kind of the way that it ends, I kind of shared that feeling a little bit with you, and not feeling like unfulfilled. But I think the big disconnect, if you played the game, then you do have that length of time with those characters. So when the process of Joel making the decision that he makes really feels more monumental, as opposed to just watching it, you're actually living that decision, which I think probably plays on it a little bit. So I'd be interested, you know, Cassia, your take as someone who didn't play the game, and the way that you connect with it there. And I would have liked the opening kind of sequence there, with Ellie's mother, you know, giving birth, and Marlene. That's absolutely incredible. That's Ashley Johnson playing the mother there, who is Ellie in the game. So that's really great to see her getting a role, getting something to do, and play a vital part of Ellie's story here in this one as well. But I would have liked, yeah, like you said, maybe just like one more thing, or maybe like one more flashback, or maybe the way that they edit it, where you know, Marlene is going in to have to you know, to kill Anna there, maybe the way that that's edited, and you really could have pitted it, you know, surrogate mother versus surrogate father, you know, and kind of the emotional war over you know, Ellie's life, as it were. So yeah, so definitely kind of echo those, Dave. But what about you, Al? What did you think about the last episode, now that we're through this journey?
Yeah, I'm definitely kind of a similar mind as you two. You know, there was something about it that just didn't quite strike me the same way, and maybe it's because I know the ending already. I would be curious to know. I haven't heard anybody who didn't play the game before, or who didn't already know the story beforehand, recount their experience with that finale yet. And so I do feel like I am missing out a little bit on that kind of an experience of like, okay, this is the ending. The one thing that maybe kind of felt off for me was that at the end, when you make this decision as Joel, that you are going to protect Ellie and save her from the, you know, the scientists and the fireflies in this community, you are traveling through and like kind of defending yourself and shooting all the enemies as you're getting to Ellie. And in this one, it had this very terrorist school shooter vibe where like he just went in, doom, 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 like he's just massacring people who weren't even trying to attack him back. And you see a couple people who are kind of shooting at him, but he nails them, but you see these people who are running from him. And I never encountered that in the video game, not that I can remember anyways. Aside from, you know, once you get into the room and you're like, okay, you have to shoot the lead scientist, doctor guy, and take her away. That's kind of the only experience of taking out somebody who seemed defenseless. And so in them showing that, it did have like a kind of a different tone, and it made me kind of feel like, oh, I'm not liking this way that they're showing him. And maybe they wanted to kind of like change our mind about how so many people had kind of felt about it. But it made me feel like, maybe this wasn't really the right decision. And so I kind of did feel like it was missing something. It didn't quite stick the landing quite like the video game does.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, and I'll agree with that. I do wonder if maybe kind of the way they presented Joel through this and throughout the whole series is to kind of set up the tone for Joel in The Last of Us Part 2 when they get to that, to make that story feel a little bit more connected, versus, if you've not had the chance to, to play the game, if you've just watched this series, to kind of understand a little bit more about why that story goes the way that goes. And now we're just going to have to wait for The Last of Us Part 2 to come out here, hopefully soon. We'll all have a chance now. I think it sounds from the sounds of it that we're all, very eager to get back in and play through this game, with the lens of having seen the series now, to see how we feel about the game, what we've learned, what lessons we've learned and taken away from the series. So I think that's going to be a really fun exercise as we wait for The Last of Us Part 2. So let's just run it around the horn. We kind of touched on this. I kind of jumped the gun there a little bit, but 9 episodes in, 9 episodes down. Cassia, what did you think about The Last of Us? Are you happy to have the story in your life as someone who hadn't really experienced the game before?
There were, highs that were there and crushing emotional lows. Like I would be messaging you, and it's like, yeah, because I kind of was behind in watching some of the episodes. I'm like, I have to pace myself because like this winter is very long. There's not as much sun, and like. Blah blah blah, and like The Last of Us, like I don't want to get too much of a downer, so I have to space them out, watch comedies like I said. And but it was a incredibly well written TV show. I think a great adaptation. It was acted well, it was produced well, it got it seems like the fans generally seem to like it, I think that Pedro Pascal was a great Joel, Bella Ramsey was a great Ellie. They got the voice actors for Joel and Ellie from the video game, and they got I think her name is Merle Dandridge back as Marlene too. So yeah. that was cool. And because we run a Knights of the Old Republic podcast, and we spent, many, many episodes like hypothesizing how an imaginary adaptation that will never be adapted, could work for Knights of the Old Republic 1, it gets me thinking, like, I love movies through and through, but maybe like if we're trying to adapt a video game, maybe TV isn't the only way that video games can be adapted, but maybe it's a little bit easier to do it as a TV show. There will be a video game movie adaptation that is commercially successful and accepted by critics and fans. That will happen one day, but maybe like, I don't know, like maybe we'll see like not copycats, but maybe like other studios try their hand as The Last of Us kind of leads the way in video game adaptations.
Yeah, that's right. We have, I think, God of War. The Amazon, I think, is Amazon doing that? Yeah. So that'll be the next one up, and it's going to have some big shoes to fill. Al, what do you think? 9 episodes in, 9 episodes out. What were your overall and closing thoughts about The Last of Us?
I think that this kind of is another feather in the cap of successful video game adaptations. Let's see, last year we had the Cyberpunk TV show, Edgerunners on Netflix. We also had the Cuphead show make its debut back like almost at the very beginning of the year, like February or January something. That's another great kind of TV show. And then I think it was like the November 2021 or something. It was like right around in that time frame. We also got Arcane. That's another great, amazing TV show. Netflix is really kind of killing it for like all these video game adaptations, and it feels like, oh, other people are hopping into that train. I think that some of those probably still didn't get viewers. Like, I don't know that many people who have seen the Cuphead show. And people who see it, they're like, oh, it's a cartoon, I'm not going to watch that. Or they see Cyberpunk and they're like, oh, it's an anime, I don't watch anime. I think that this one kind of makes it a little bit more mainstream for people, just as the way that the video game made mainstream, it made video game storytelling a little bit more mainstream. That, hey, you can tell you can tell a story in a game and have it be primarily cinematics and stuff like that, and have a continuous gameplay loop. So I think that this one opens the floodgates for other adaptations. You mentioned God of War is coming out. There's a TV show or movie being produced by like Peacock that's for, what is it? I can't remember it. It's Twisted Metal from PlayStation. And then there's also Netflix is adapting a Horizon Zero Dawn prequel show.
Ooh.
So we've got several of these kind of in the works, and then we've also got like the other PlayStation video game Gran Turismo being directed by Neil Blomkamp. So we've got like quite a bit in, like, Sony is loading up all the chambers so that they can just like fire away and give us lots of good content, kind of make it more accessible to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that Uncharted film left things open-ended enough if they want to go back and revisit that world too. I think that would be something I would be interested in seeing. Like I said, I had a fun time enough with that movie. I think that it's worth revisiting, and I think now that they have one under their belt, they kind of can feel things out a little bit more. But Dave, we made it through. We made it all the way to Salt Lake City. Joel doomed all of humanity. But what did you think about The Last of Us, the series? Take it away.
I really enjoyed this series. I think it's going to be, a top 10 show for me for a long, long time, maybe top 5. Shows that I've just really, really enjoyed. Any quips that I have are super minor. They're really minor. It was a fantastic show, a really good journey. Some of the acting was amazing, and I really left this show feeling like they hit these certain story beats so much. They were just much more impactful than I ever had playing the game. The thematic stories of that it is, all the different ways that love can express itself, and in both the goods and the bad sides of those things. So I was very, very pleased with it, and especially with the acting, the writing, and the production. I'm very happy with where it is. Having played the second game a couple of times, I very, very much love that story. I'm very curious how they're going to adapt it, because it's a so much more challenging story, just between the story beats and the emotional places it's gonna go. I almost worry if people will get too worn out by getting beat up by the series. But I love this story. There's so much that I admire about it, and yeah, anytime that I'll get a chance, I'll talk about it. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, The Last of Us Part 2, I'm very interested to see how they handle that, because that story, it's very brutal, but it's a lot more kind of nuanced, I think, in the way that it tells its story. So it'll be really interesting to see how they handle that. And I couldn't be happier for the way that this was pulled off. Like I said, I had kind of my own kind of high expectations about it and things like that, but I was mostly as I mentioned at the top, I was just really wanting the story to get out into the world for people to experience it, because it's a story that is that's worth people knowing and connecting with these characters and feeling these emotions. And I fortunate enough to have played the game and experienced that for myself, but people that never were going to get that experience or didn't have any desire to have that experience can now understand this world and understand why it's so important to the people who've been playing it for the last 10 years. So I think that stuff is really great, and pretty exciting that it's out there, and exciting that it did so well, and it became very every bit as much as Game of Thrones was the Sunday night on HBO that everyone talked about. This turned into that, and I thought that was excellent. And having our online Instagram chats about the episode, and waiting for everyone to watch it so we could gush about all the things that we loved, and how much we cried during all of the episodes and stuff like that was just absolutely unbelievable. So I don't know, that is The Last of Us. It's inspired a lot of stories. It's taken a lot of inspiration, and definitely inspiring me to get back to my PlayStation and play that Last of Us Part 1 remake there. So what do you think, Cassia? Is there anything else that we need to chat about here in regards of The Last of Us? Or
Well, in future seasons, I want to see Redacted and Redacted Journey. Redacted's redacted, and how it redacts redacted would be fascinating. And I want more stories that explore Redacted and evoke the feeling of Redacted.
You're digging into spoilers for Last of Us Part 2. We can't have that. Everyone should go play it though. It's tough. If Cassie, if you needed to watch cartoons and comedies for like a week after watching one of these, you're gonna have to watch them for like a month straight after each of these episodes for Last of Us Part 2. I can guarantee. So yes, that is The Last of Us. Let us know down in the comments or on our social media channels if you've played the game, what you thought about the series, all that stuff. And make sure you go check out our guests. So Al, let's go to you first. Where can everyone find you online if they want to check out your podcast, what you got going on, and just how can people connect with you?
Primarily the best place to connect with me if you want to actually get some response back. Check out my Instagram. It's Al_Whalehome. Whalehome is just one word together. I post a lot of art. Sometimes I post Pokemon video game kind of characters. I did one of God of War a couple months back. So I'm into that. So come check out my art. You can interact with me on there. If you want to just kind of listen to my wonderful voice a little bit further, you can hear me on the Movies That Move Us podcast. Not to be confused with the movies that made us, but we talk about movies that have affected people, maybe helped change their life trajectory, help them just see the world a little bit differently. And so you can check that one out. We're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts right now. And check out my movie reviews on Letterboxd. That's just search up Whale Home.
Home, all right, yeah, go check that out wherever you're listening to this. You can probably find that podcast there too, I'm guessing. So go make sure you check that out. Leave it a 5-star review. Leave us a 5-star review because that helps the world go round in terms of podcasts. So thank you so much for coming on, Al. Dave, thank you so much for coming on. I know, like I said, we've been talking about Last of Us now for a while. You keep calling me out for not watching the episodes fast enough, not playing Last of Us Part 2 fast enough. You're giving me a ton of slack, but that's okay. I was very happy to get you on. Where can people, if they want to reach out to you and talk about The Last of Us, they probably can. Where can they do that?
I'm always up for talking about it. So I'm on Instagram at BabuFrick, BABUFRIK. I primarily share, promote and share alt movie posters, like stuff from galleries like Mondo and Bottleneck, and fan arts. It's primarily a Star Wars themed account, but if you drop me a message on there and say, hey, let me in on the close friends list, I share many other fandom arts, including Last of Us, the Marvel, and whatever other shows and pop art happens to come across my feeds that I really enjoy. So I love sharing posters, and I collect movie posters, and I love to talk about them. So at BabuFrick on Instagram.
That's right. Yeah, make sure you bump up your poster a weekly spending allowance if you're going to follow Babu Frick, because he's going to make you jealous and want to get all these new posters that he's finding and stuff that's really awesome. So Al, Dave, thank you so much for coming on and talking about The Last of Us. Cassie and I could not have done this alone, just like Joel could not have gotten Ellie all the way to Salt Lake City on his own as we got to explore this story. So I don't know, any closing thoughts on this one, Cassia?
Yeah, it's just a great adaptation of a great video game. If you're emotionally ready, check it out, on HBO Max. And thank you again to our guests, Dave and Al. It was a fun one.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, normally we close these out by saying, may the force be with you. But Cassie, I think in honor of The Last of Us, let's close this one out by saying, look for the light.
Look for the light. All
Can I say it
right.
too? Look for the light.
Well, yeah, everyone can say it for sure.
Oh, okay.
When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
There you go. Perfect.